Good morning, cyberspace. I'm Mr. Hosking, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about economics this morning. What is economics? Economics is a process in which we answer the question, who gets what and how they get it. What people are going to get, like who wants it, what do they want, how do they get what they want, and why they get it also. It deals with supply, which is the amount of stuff that's out there. It's finite. There's nothing that's infinite. Everything has a limited amount of things. And demand, which is how badly it's wanted. And so these two things interact with each other depending on how much of something there is and how badly people want it. That increases or decreases the cost or how much it takes to get it. There's also this idea of diminishing return on demand. This is saying that the more you have of something, the less you actually want it. And I like to use Twinkies as my example when thinking of diminishing return on demand. I love Twinkies, and I want to have a Twinkie, and I'm willing to pay maybe $3 or $4 for one Twinkie. Just right now, if you had a Twinkie and you could give it to me, I would pay $4 for that Twinkie, and it would be really good. And I'd love to eat a second Twinkie, but not as much as that first Twinkie. So that second Twinkie, maybe I'd be willing to pay $2 for. See, the first Twinkie I was willing to pay $4 for. The second Twinkie I'm only willing to pay $2 for. And then, a third Twinkie, like maybe I'd pay $1 for it. And I could probably eat 3 Twinkies. But a fourth Twinkie, I don't think I would even want a fourth Twinkie. It's just too dry. My mouth would be dried out. I don't have anything to drink. So I'd probably cut it off at 3 Twinkies. I wouldn't pay anything for 4 Twinkies. If you wanted me to eat a fourth Twinkie, you'd have to pay me money to eat a fourth Twinkie. So there's a diminishing return on demand. There's less that I want the more I have of something. The Neolithic Revolution happens 10,000 BCE before Common Era. That's about 12,000 years ago. And we see it's the move from nomadic people, where people would move around the world following their food sources. They were hunters and gatherers. They would pick berries off of wild trees or wild fruit or wild vegetables, and they would hunt animals, and they moved to an agricultural society where they farm their own food, they domesticate their own animals. There are positives to this movement and there are negatives to this movement. One of the major positives would be now you can own stuff. You don't have to carry around with you everything that you own throughout the world. You have a home where you can keep your stuff. The negative would be that now you have to protect that stuff. The more stuff you accrue, the more stuff that you have, the more you have to be able to protect it, and other people can come around and take your stuff. With farming, with the Neolithic Revolution, another idea occurred. It was labor specialization. Labor specialization is where everybody has one specific job that they become really good at. You're a teacher like me, and all it is that you do is teach people. Or you're a farmer, and all you do is grow crops. Or you're a policeman, and all you do is protect and serve people. Or you're a fireman, and all you do is learn how to put out fires. So you become responsible for one specific job. In nomadic times, everybody was responsible for everything. Everybody hunted. Everybody gathered food. Everybody carried their shelters around. Everybody took care of the kids. Now, with this specialization with farming, everybody has one job or maybe 2 jobs that they're responsible for, and everybody specializes in the job that they do. This also leads to a power struggle. Certain groups of people become more important than other groups of people. Now, not everybody's equal. We start to see some people get more than other people get. This also leads to cultural diffusion. Cultural diffusion is the movement of goods between groups of people. It leads to 2 major things. One leads to increased communication between different groups of people that would have, if they were nomadic, never communicated with each other before. And it also leads to cooperation. Now these groups are working with each other. One group is focusing maybe on creating farming goods, and the other group is maybe focusing on making firewood, and they trade with each other and they become really good at the things that they're good at. This leads to the sharing of ideas, which is really what cultural diffusion is all about. People communicating with each other to share ideas, and then they take those ideas and they expand the uses for them and they make them more useful. They expand the scope of what that idea can accomplish. Maybe if you're collecting wood in that example of farming and wood, if you're collecting wood, you create an axe and you make the handle longer and it becomes easier for you to cut down trees and chop up wood. And then you start talking to those farmers and you're like, yeah, I used a longer handle and it gave me more power. So then they start using longer handles on their tools and they're able to accomplish more as farmers. See, that's cultural diffusion. It's sharing ideas between several different cultures. I'd like to talk about a couple of definitions of economic systems with you. Barter is the first one. Bartering is how people transfer goods between each other. It's trade, but it's trading one good for another good. So in our example of farmers and woodcutters, they're trading cut up wood for food, for crops. So they're trading one good for another good. It's how people survive when they only do one job, when they're only responsible for one thing. Capitalism is an economic system which private companies control all of the factors of production. We see they're in charge of labor, they're in charge of capital or the machines that make the good. They're in charge of getting everything put together. So the example I'm using is Cookout. Cookout is a restaurant here down the block. They make burgers, they make fries, they make hush puppies, they make chicken tenders. It's owned by a group of owners or investors, and they pay for everything. They pay for the building, they pay for the workers, they pay for all of the raw materials like the hamburger meat, the chicken tender meat, the breading, the cornmeal that makes the hush puppies. They pay for everything, and then they pay the workers to make all of those things into finished products. Then they sell those finished products to people like me and you for profit, and that's how capitalism works. It's the exchange of money for goods and services, and the owners are responsible for making everything, and they make a profit off of what they sell. Communism is a similar idea, but instead of a group of investors owning the factors of production, the community, everyone owns the factors of production. It's harder to find examples of this, but one good example in our community would be the Raleigh Food Co-op. Anyone can join the co-op. The idea of the co-op is that they buy fresh foods and vegetables from all around Raleigh, and they bring it into the co-op, and then the owners of the co-op can buy all of those goods, and they don't pay extra for them. There's no profit. The co-op doesn't make money. It gets goods as cheap as it can, and it sells it to its community of people for as cheap as it can. The idea of communism is that there's no profit. Nobody should benefit. Everybody should be a member of it, and everybody should work for the benefit of the community. Utilitarianism is the idea of creating stuff only for usefulness, not because we want them or we want to differentiate or we want to have beauty or ornamentation. It's the idea that only things should be created because they're useful. A good example for this would be high schools in Raleigh using school uniforms. The purpose of clothing is to protect us from the environment, to cover up our body, to be less distracting. And so in a school that uses uniforms, everybody has exactly the same clothes on. They're not pretty, they're not cute, they're khaki pants, and they're either blue shirts or red shirts or red shirts or green shirts. Everybody has the same exact clothes on. It's very cheap to produce because you can mass produce those items. If you look around your classroom, or if you look around, your house or your closet, you have all these different clothes. Like each one of those shirts that you own, each pair of those pants that you have has to be created individually in a group instead of all of them being created at once. So the more you change things, the more expensive it becomes to make that item. So we see in a utilitarian society, only one of every item is created, and it's just created over and over and over again. So it can be mass produced for super cheap, but there's no choice. You lose your ability to choose or to differentiate. The final definition is a command economy. A lot of times when we think of communist economies, we end up really thinking about command economies. Like communist Soviet Union or communist China, the community never actually gets control of the society. It's the government that takes control of all of the factors of production. That's a command economy. the Soviet Union, it's not a communist economy, it's a command economy. Communist economies are really theoretical. We've never seen an actual country use communist economies. So usually they're command economies. The factors of production are all controlled by the government, and the government gets to choose where the wealth goes, where the profit goes. So usually the family of the government is really wealthy, or the people that are friends with people in the government become really wealthy, and the other people become poor. I hope this helps you out when you're trying to learn about economics. I'm Mr. Hosking. Have a good day.